哎，我觉得半农先生今天可以谈一下，就是说香港这个地方现在被共产党的渗透到了令人发指的程度，对香港人民随便绑架，随便的这个查封资产，然后作为被大陆的威胁，而且大量的渗透间谍、警察执法，破坏了香港的最根本的基础，这个法律。半农先生认为美国接下来会做什么，应该做什么呢？
Mr. Bannon, could you talk a bit on the issues in Hong Kong? Like, as you know, the CCP's penetration to Hong Kong is very serious, and they have been kidnapping people in Hong Kong. They've been sending a lot of spies in Hong Kong. So, what do you think the U.S. government would do on these issues?
You know, when I was a young naval officer, the very first city in China that we pulled into or associated with China on the mainland was Hong Kong. I think that was in 1977. And back in those days, unlike Hong Kong today, the port really had, in particular the Kowloon side, you really had where the cargo ships were, and the Navy vessels really pulled down to the old British, right by on the Kowloon side, but in the Wan Chai, right near the Wan Chai is where the fleets pulled in. And so I fell totally in love with Hong Kong from the very first time I went there. I've always said that the most unique people I've ever met in the world are the Hong Kong Chinese. They have a sense of entrepreneurship, a sense of really making do with very little, making something of it. The hustle and bustle of Hong Kong at that time was just incredible. I think today in the world, one of the great tragedies we're seeing is Hong Kong. And here's why. One of my heroes has always been Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul and Margaret Thatcher, because those three people came together really to destroy the Soviet Union. But I think in her career, and I've always said this, I think the biggest single mistake she made was the turnover of Hong Kong. And the reason was, it's not that Hong Kong should not one time be reunited to China. That's not the issue. But, in making a deal and thinking about further down the road, you could have, the people she made a deal with at the time, Deng Xiaoping and that faction, she trusted, and things went very well for a while. But what happened is that you've had Wan Shishan, and what I think is basically a group of almost mob-like guys take over, and they're trying to totally redo the deal. I mean, what's happening in Hong Kong today was not what the deal was. The deal was supposed to be one country, two systems, right? And the system, the rule of law, and particularly Western commercial law, right? And people's freedom. And the reason that everybody agreed to that was the fact, in the turnover, was the fact that the Chinese, Hong Kong Chinese had a special sort of energy, right? That a special sort of entrepreneurial, it had, from a little island, you had made one of the great financial centers. You had Wall Street, you had the city of London, you had Tokyo, and you had Hong Kong. How did a little island like that with no resources do that? It was purely the grit, determination, and hard work style of the Hong Kong Chinese. That was what the whole deal was about. You wanted to keep that, first of all, you wanted to keep that to help China, to help mainland China, to be a capital market, to be a thing that Western capital could come through there, and knew that you had the rule of law, you had commercial, you had private property rights, and the people had freedom. I think one of the most inspiring things in the entire world today, two things, are the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vest in France, the working class people, and the young kids that you see in Hong Kong. These young people that take to the streets and say, hey, look, I was raised, my grandparents came here, and we were raised to be free men and women. We have the right to assemble. We have the right to vote. We have the right of a First Amendment. We have the right to say what we want to do. We were not raised as slaves, and we're not prepared to become slaves. And I also think it's also the cowardice of the giant corporations and even the banks. Everybody in Hong Kong right now, all the power brokers are looking the other way. Everybody wants to pretend this is not happening. And to me, it's not acceptable. And I don't think it's acceptable to many people, free people in the world. You see Chinese entrepreneurs, Chinese businessmen, that go to Hong Kong and just disappear. I will tell you something I would never think would happen in my adult life. Many people in the West love Hong Kong, and I've had so many people say, I'm afraid to go to Hong Kong. I don't know if I can go to Hong Kong because I see where they're taking Chinese entrepreneurs and they just disappear. This is only going to hurt not just Hong Kong, it's going to hurt the working men and women in China, because Hong Kong is really a conduit for capital to get in to help build the businesses and industries of China for the Chinese people. And what you're seeing, because the CCP is trying to exert control and trying to break a deal, that now you're seeing real fear being put into people.